Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ompuran and I'll be your host for today. The COVID 19 outbreak is causing worldwide concerns and economic hardships for consumers, businesses, and communities across the globe. These are genuinely challenging spells for companies and employees in every market. As your technology partner, we want to play our part in helping your business stay agile and productive in the month and years ahead. In this regard, we have set up the Discover Digital webinar series. Hosted by a team of industry experts, Solsus ME, a Yash technology company, welcomes you to the first webinar of a premium webinar series. The format of today's webinar would be in the form of panel discussion. Our topic for today is Impact of COVID-19 on banks and the way forward. I'll start with a quick introduction of Yash Technologies. Yash Technology is a global technology consulting services provider which is committed to helping customers align their technology innovation and business strategy. Yash enables financial firms to retain and win customers by offering superior customer experience, improved revenue, and margin with excellence in operation and risk management. It has been serving some of the prestigious large banks across the US, UK, Middle East, and rest of the world. Solsus Middle East is the division of Yash Technology in the MENA region. Headquartered in Dubai, we are a leading IT and consulting services company with marquee customers across the Middle East and Africa. Let's quickly look at the profile of the speakers for today. We have three industry experts in our panel for today. I'll start with a quick introduction of Mr. Gotham Gupta. Mr. Gotham Gupta is Vice President Enterprise Solution with Yash Technologies. Gotham is associated with Yash for over 15 years. He has over 28 years of experience in the IT industry. Gotham is majorly responsible for aligning the company's digital vision with the emerging and the futuristic technology which are relevant to customer and the industry. He has led large customer engagement and projects in diverse industry verticals, including banking. Next, we have Mr. Hitesh Sarda in our panel. Mr. Hitesh Sarda is a Vice President for the Banking and Financial Services practice with Yash Technologies. He has spent 2 decades in the banking industry, building and managing business critical applications. At Yash, he advises banks on improving customer experience and operational excellence as a part of their digital transformation journey. His areas of interest span the entire customer lifecycle, right from CRM, account opening, onboarding, customer service, and customer engagement. He's also an avid blogger and speaker and keeps on sharing his views on the trending topics in banking and financial sectors. Next, we have Mr. Srinivas Tiwari in our panel. Mr. Srinivas Tiwari is a Vice President with Yash Technologies. Srinivas is an enterprise-level technical leader with over 2 decades of relevant IT experience, mostly in the banking and financial services. Srinivas has vast experience in delivering projects for Tier 1 banks and insurance companies across various lines of business, such as retail, investment, lending, term life, and whole life. Mr. Gautam would be our moderator for the panel discussion. Before I hand over the mic to Mr. Gautam, let me highlight few points. Today's webinar will be available on demand after the live session. We'll be sharing you the details. We are also taking questions and inputs. If you have any questions for a speaker, please feel free to send it through the Ask a Question tab at the bottom of your player. And we'll be answering the question at the end of the session. So without any further ado, I would like to kick things off by welcoming Mr. Gotham Gupta. Over to you, Mr. Gotham. So we are trying to get Gotham Gupta on air. Just give us a minute.
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering if I was going to speak on mute. So thank you for unmuting me. So Thank you, Om, and thanks for the nice introduction. And just a quick housekeeping stuff. We would take questions at the end of the sessions. And if you would like to ask any question, please feel free to write those questions on the chat window, and we will take those at the end of the session. So thank you all. And again, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session. It's a privilege to be here and with the esteemed company of Hitesh Sharda and Srinivas Tiwari. And they would be giving us some insights on how the world is changing around us, and certainly the world is going through a tough stretch at the moment. We are all confined to our homes and trying to work our best. And as we all know, COVID-19 officially is declared as the global pandemic by the World Health Organization. It continues to evolve with far-fetching effects on people worldwide. More than 5,000 cases have been recorded so far across Middle East, and several of them have been confirmed in the UAE itself. The outbreak has depressed global financial markets and had severe implications on trade, supply chains, economies globally. Subsequently, deteriorating cash flows in sectors such as tourism, travel, hospitality. These are the most impacted by the outbreak. While we are all navigating through the current lockdown, businesses globally are struggling with this unforeseen crisis and are trying to mitigate the challenges. The Middle East has shown great resilience, demonstrating the ability to weather previous outbreaks diligently, including the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, also known as MERS, in 2012. However, today the region faces a new challenge with the outbreak of COVID-19. A growing anticipation of cyclical economic downturn accelerated by the impact of COVID-19 has worsened the credit quality and limited funding, thus placing greater pressure on the liquidity of financial institutions, particularly banks in this region. The Central Bank of UAE also earlier formally requested banks to implement measures to counteract the effects of COVID-19, including rescheduling of loans, offering temporary deferrals on monthly loan payments, and reducing fees and commissions, and so on. So a leading management consulting company also warns that the resulting impact of coronavirus or COVID-19 outbreak on global economy would lead to reduced borrowing, with lending that will affect banks, with the bearing on corporate and personal finance in Dubai and Middle East as a whole. So today we are going to discuss what would be the impact of COVID-19 specifically with banks. So I have an esteemed company of Mr. Hitesh Sharda and Srinivas Tiwari, who would be sharing their perspective on how to manage through this crisis. So welcome, Hitesh and Srinivas. So my first question, Hitesh, is to you.
Hi, Gotham.
Hi, Hitesh. So my question is to you, Hitesh. And how do you think the developing COVID situation is testing all organizations globally? Do you have any idea in terms of, you have been discussing with large banks and businesses across this region? What do you think would be the impact on the banking and financial services in the next quarters?
It's such an interesting question, Gautam. And like any economic crisis, it's always that banks find themselves in the middle of the whole situation, leading from the front, trying to help their customers. And this crisis really is bigger than anything we have seen in the last decade. So banks are bracing themselves for loan defaults and also reevaluating their entire loan portfolio. They are taking proactive steps to help the stressed loans, and you mentioned some of those steps. Fiscal stimulus also from the central banks across the globe, and that's also to try and help businesses and individuals tide over this crisis. On the deposit side, I see that banks' assets are reducing. And despite all this gloomy situation, we see that banks are out there helping their customers in every way possible, whether it is fee waiver or reduction in fees or deferring loan payments or extending the loans or extending overdraft facilities. So banks are really up front and center in this situation, like any other crisis. Having said all that, over the next 3-4 quarters, I see that the banks would be focusing on three major themes. The first is how to aid their customers, both companies and individuals. This we are seeing a little bit already, but this is going to, we'll see more of it. The second is rethinking the role of an employee and how they are managed. They will move towards a more autonomous working relationship with little or no supervision, and work with people who have the innovation trait in them, because this is essential to work during a crisis situation. And the third is technology, and technology to aid the first and the second point, by enabling remote working or by enabling and making the banks a safer place by improving the digital channels. Yeah. So those are the three major themes I see playing out in the next 3-4 quarters.
Yeah, that's a great insight, Hitesh. And I think banks had already started their journey of digital transforming themselves digitally. I think now is the time that they need to put the foot on the pedal much harder. So, similar question to Srinivas. I mean, how do you think the technology is going to be helpful in doing this?
Thank you, Gautam. Even before this crisis came along, banks were already on path of several variants of branchless operating models for their products. This crisis is forcing not just banks, but several industries to rethink their operating model. What this adverse situation has done is quickened the timeline to adopt a fully online bank, at least the retail part of it.
Okay. So yeah. So what we keep hearing, this current situation is becoming a new normal. It's now going to be the way of life. So that has been paraphrased. So how do you think, Hitesh, banks would be able to handle the current situation in preparing for the current scenario as well as the post-COVID world as well?
So banks are preparing for this current situation, or the so-called new normal, where customers have moved on and adopted a branchless, cashless digital world. So banks need to increase their technology investments in enabling this transition or adapting to this transition. Banks will reconsider everything that needs a human touch point and evaluate how those functions will be performed in case of another pandemic. So we are also working closely with banks to improve their security, as well as collaboration tools like Microsoft Teams and SharePoints. Security is important because with employees working from home, and most of them are working on their own devices, so these are not the approved devices. So this has become an expected thing in the new normal. One immediate impact I see is banks rethinking their call center strategy. How to reduce the need for people to come to a centralized call center. For one, we are working with banks to reduce the calls volumes itself by moving them to other channels like voice assistant and chatbots. So that's where I see the new normal and how banks would have to move to that.
Yeah, thanks, Hitesh. And I think security one point that you made was very, very critical. I mean, suddenly we saw most of us, or rather all of us, started working from our homes, and we were actually looking as to how we can connect to the banking system securely. So, how, Srinivas, this question is for you. Uh, can you give us some specific examples? How do you see the technology playing an increasingly an important role in the banks navigating through the new normal?
Well, banks have always been very, very quick to adopt technology. For example, from the magnetic swipe of the card, moved on to chip, and then near field communication, NFC, and then now digital wallets for payments. The new norm helps in accelerating technology adoption to the next level, especially with respect to all the touch points that Hitesh was mentioning, wherever there is customer interaction. For example, for account opening, wherever there is a need for signing physical signature on the forms, or teller transactions where they need to have a cash withdrawal or cash deposit or check deposit. Fingerprint, Face ID based access to banking services, especially with respect to UAE, the government-backed national ID UAE Pass supporting the authentication and document sharing, and specifically digital signatures. And the other interesting point that Hitesh mentioned was reducing the call center volumes by moving on to voice assistants and chatbots, where the natural language processing accuracy has, I mean, they've been around for some time now, but then the accuracy is like really improving from 70% to over 90% now. So there's a lot going on how banks can work with their customers using these digital channels. And then there is also the robotic process automation technology, where any repeatable human being task can be automated from back office to middle office to front office, not only to help reduce the turnaround time, but also save some costs for the bank.
And certainly, and I mean, this is how we have started seeing the change in the banking system, with all the buzzwords of digital transformation coming in. And so my question is to Hitesh, in the banking sector specifically, I mean, we have been hearing about this buzzword digital transformation, and a lot of banks have been in that journey of transforming themselves, trying to do automation and trying to do a lot of neat stuff. So do you think with this current situation, is that going to fast track any of those activities, and how do you see going through this crisis?
So banks will double down on digital transformation. There's no question of slowing this journey. It would only speed up. And there are some reasons for this. One was the new normal we spoke about, but the other is everyone and every bank specifically are now preparing for another pandemic. They don't want to be caught unawares. So the ROI computation for any project or any initiative will now have this factored in. So this will shift the focus to areas that were not considered previously. Maybe because they were not essential, maybe they were not frequent enough, but with this factor of a black swan event or a pandemic, a lot of other initiatives will now come into focus. I'll give you an example. So I was speaking to the head of IT of a large asset management company, and he mentioned that their digital customer, the ones using either their mobile app or their web app, they have grown 20% just in the month of March. In April, they expect a similar increase. That kind of increase is not possible with any sort of marketing or advertising initiative. This is a forced change, and this change will stick to the customers. So
what I'm saying is the shift of the customer behavior will force the banks to adopt further initiatives, and it's a virtuous cycle. These initiatives are also going to fund it. So again, consider the case of the AMC. That growth of the digital customer by 20% has reduced a lot of their cost, both in distribution and in operational terms. So these savings are now going to be channeled back as digital investments. And they are talking to us to revamp their entire portfolio of customer facing and distributor facing applications. So I am seeing this forced opportunity as a accelerator to their entire digital transformation initiatives at the banks. Thanks, Gautam.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see. I mean, yes, definitely banks are going to fast track some of their initiatives, as you rightly said, right? I would be interested in knowing from Srinivas, what key technologies do you think banks would look at in the current space that we are in? Everyone talks about cloud and RPA and so on. So, what do you think are the key technology areas that banks would accelerate or accelerate their adoption in the new normal times?
Well, like I was just mentioning, robotic process automation is a really good candidate for automating repeatable tasks that is going to save cost and also improve on the turnaround time. And then there is also this account servicing through unmanned digital channels, through voice assistants and chatbots. In fact, we are actively helping a bank in Kuwait to reduce the volume on their call center through these automated assistants for servicing of their accounts. And then there's also this data angle where we have intelligent predictions based on customer needs through mining, segmentation, profiling of data from internal and social sources, of course, with specific focus on security and privacy. But what I find interesting is that asymmetric public key cryptography, which has been around from 1970s, so far it was only used for signing digital certificates at a server level. Slowly it is making way into the end customers domain as well, where end users, customers can actually use digital signatures for signing of forms for account opening. Especially governments are also showing some interest. In case of UAE, we have this UAE Pass initiative where they are host like a set of use cases where whether it is simple authentication or whether it is signing some documents for account opening and that serve as a digital onboarding platform, and then physically teller transactions or even updating KYC. So whenever there is a KYC which is expired, an automated message can be sent to the customer where they can upload the new document. So all these do not require any physical interactions with any of the bank staff from the customer side, making it more efficient and more suited in the situation that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, that's interesting to see. I mean, Srinivas, you did mention now that a lot of these services would enable customers not to visit the bank or do things online. So is that the role is going to change for the customer with the new normal? Will it accelerate the drive towards reimagining how the banks will deliver services to the customers? Because we are all used to going into a bank and for doing a transaction, whether it is depositing a check, withdrawing cash, or doing some transaction. So there are so many customer facing roles are there within the bank which they need to deliver. So how do you think, and this question is for Hitesh, how do you think it would change there as well?
You're absolutely right, Gautam. There is a forced reimagination of banking. Things that were thought impossible has happened in the last 4 weeks. Just last week, I was talking to the head of equities technology at a global investment bank, and they have moved the equity trading desk to the trader's home. This was unimaginable. I used to support traders in London, and the Asia desk used to come into office at 7 a.m. and the US desk used to stay back till 10 p.m. And now they work remotely. And so nothing is out of bounds now. When the doctors can consult on video, why can't bankers? So what I'm saying is the customers have moved. They have moved to digital channels. They have moved to cashless methods. We will see an increased investment in contactless or cashless payments, in digital wallets. I wouldn't be surprised to see if banks start acquiring, they already did, but at an increasing pace, as they start acquiring fintech companies who are struggling during this crisis, and we would see a new banking chapter unfurl in the next quarters.
Yeah, I would be more interested in seeing bank start delivering home services, home delivery services. So that would be more interesting to see. Just like the pizza, you order the bank services and you get in 30 minutes. Okay, so moving on to my next question, and this is for Srinivas. So as Hitesh was mentioning, right, a lot of these services would be digital, a lot of automation. Do you think the banks are ready for this change, in the sense, are their employees, their internal employees, they have to go through a lot of training, banks have to manage their workforce in this emerging paradigm. So how quickly do you think it would happen, or what do you think they have to do?
Absolutely. So I'll take an example from our organization where everyone is working from home, and we have started using more tools for collaboration with respect to work-related interaction like Microsoft Teams. And then we also have the social angle of it, all the physical interactions that we miss, we handle to SuccessFactors, SAP Jam, Social Connects, and corporate social networking, a kind of replacement for that digital water cooler, or a coffee break conversation. Apart from that, organizations like ours, they also have these L&D teams which have come up with a set of online interactive courses with evaluations that help enhance not only learning, but how do you adapt to these sort of situations. More and more what I see is whenever people work from their home in isolation, adoption of the distributed agile team structure to increase interaction and help deliver as a team. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is I heard that recently NASA engineers working from home completed a drilling operation on Mars using the Curiosity rover with makeshift 3D glasses, as they could not get the high-end graphics card shipped to their home in time. I mean, life-changing events, life-changing adverse events like this current COVID situation give a whole new meaning to business continuity plan, where it is no longer just the continuity of the business, but reimagining and reinventing all the process associated with it. I see more adoption of internal social collaborations, not just for enablement and daily interactions, but also as a digital platform to simulate a physical workplace.
And certainly, and I think you made a pretty valid point. Business continuity is of paramount importance, and with events like COVID-19, which came out of the blue, most of us were caught off guard, in the sense suddenly everything got shut down. We did not knew, or probably we were not even prepared to how we are going to handle this situation. So God forbid if something like this happens in the next future, how do you think the banks would be prepared going forward? And this question is for Hitesh. So what do you think they should do for preparing themselves to avoid such situations in future?
So this is a question on the top of every bank CEO right now. Banks across the globe are preparing a pandemic playbook. The focus at varying levels is on their employees, their processes, and technology to enable that. The biggest challenge is to ensure that employees feel safe and they have clear understanding of their role during a crisis. Especially where important people might be out of action, whether it's due to sickness or unable to go to the place of work. So technology is an important tool in the playbook. So there is the pandemic readiness that is going on, and for example, a global bank I interacted with, they are adding this to their business continuity testing. So, and apart from that, they are also re-looking at their readiness. So for example, we are helping a bank in updating their risk dashboard and how they do stress tests to their loan book to include this pandemic factor or an unforeseen factor. Yeah. Personally, I think banks should test their readiness or test their pandemic playbook every quarter by making majority of their staff work from home for 1 week. So a week quarter is what I would suggest, because that's the only way they can ensure that the bank will run and function smoothly when an actual crisis happens next time, without putting their employees at risk or inconveniencing their customers. The other factor is to ensure a safe workplace and customer touchpoints, not just branches, but ATMs or point of sale terminal, because everything will now be designed or needs to be designed to ensure that they are safe and contact free and do not aid in transmission of any such disease. So that's broadly where the readiness focus is, and rest assured, every bank we have been in touch with are in some level of preparedness right now. They are all focused on that.
Yeah, I'm sure they will be, and this is not something that they can ignore. They have to prepare themselves. So I was just wondering, and this is more of an open question to both of you guys, and help me understand what is Yash as a company has a role to play in this whole ecosystem with banks, and what kind of services do you guys bring to the table for the banks to leverage and accelerate their journeys on the digital transformation side and security and business continuity and so on? So can you throw some light on that?
Sure, Dr.
You can
I'll go
start.
first.
Yeah.
So Yash is a technology partner to a lot of global banks. We pride ourselves in being a partner in true sense. So we work with the banks, we discuss their issues, we bring in our insights collected through our interaction with multiple other banks, and we advise the banks on the way forward. Having said that, some of the current initiatives I have also mentioned earlier. So we are helping them across their people strategy. We are helping them with their collaboration tool. We are helping them with their the digital water cooler technology. We are also working with them on their technology suite, whether be it security, be it RPA, be it dashboards, or updating their analytics framework to change stress testing or all of that. So we are working on several initiatives. There are other initiatives that Srinivas is working on. I'll let him talk about those.
Yeah, so we as a company have got deep expertise in banking as a domain and use of technology to reduce costs and turnaround time. We already are helping organizations in Middle East region, apart from other global players, to reinvent their operating model. We can help consult, like we are doing with other banks, on any and all aspects of customer lifecycle management, from digital onboarding to loan disbursement system to CRM. Apart from that, we can also help integrate with national digital identities like UAE Pass, whether in terms of just authentication or use of digital signatures for signing of documents or authorizing teller transactions and so forth, apart from RPA. So we would like to share what are your problem statements and what are the solutions that we have already implemented and how we can customize them for you and so on.
Yeah, thank you, Srinivas. And I think this was a very, very insightful session for all our audience. And with all the new technologies that are coming, that will definitely enable the new normal to go fast forward on this environment. So I think this is really helpful. Moving with that, I would let gets into the next session and probably take a few questions from the audience if there are any. And I would let Om take those questions. Om, do we have any questions for our panelists?
Well, thank you, Gautam. We do have questions popping up from our audience. The first question is for Mr. Srinivas. What are the short-term and long-term opportunities?
Well, the very short-term opportunities that we see and which are quickly doable all the way to production are the RPA related opportunities, where we can identify through a discovery process an existing process and see how we can optimize it, or how we can remove the manual step from this process and maybe even go to production in as short a time as 2 weeks to 3 weeks. So short-term candidates, we identify the process and try to see how we can improve them. A little bit longer term is to improve the digital channels for sales and services activities, for example, in retail. So we figure out how many channels are there currently, what customers are using, how we can improve them, how we can take the human task away from that. And then a little bit of long-term strategy would be to enhance omni-channel customer experience through meaningful customer journeys, and also hyper-personalized offers and targeted campaigns to customers through customer data analysis in terms of segmentation or profiling or finding the right product for the customer, what they need, starting from the acquisition all the way to service and retention.
Thank you, Srinivas. We'll go on to the next question. This one is for Hitesh. Let me read it out. Now that we understand that there will be a rush to complete digital transformation, what is the best way to fast track buying products, buying services? Hitesh.
That's an interesting question, Om, and unfortunately, there's no right answer for that. It really depends on where the bank is on their digital transformation journey. If they have invested in a lot of in-house applications and they can rapidly add the additional functionality and features required, they could look at a build strategy. If the initiative is something which is well defined and there is or there are multiple mature products in that space in the market, they could go for a buy strategy. It could be a mix of the two, because every product that you buy has this integration requirement from your other systems, because today the customers are expecting a seamless integrated response from a bank, no matter which channel or which system they are dealing with. So there's no right answer. It really depends on where the bank is, and that's something also we help the banks deal with, by assessing their current technology landscape, by understanding their roadmap, and by plotting out the best strategy across the multiple initiatives to be able to roll out these initiatives over the next timeline that the bank has. Thanks, Om.
Thanks, Hitesh. Next, we have two questions on remote working. I'll invite Mr. Srinivas to answer these. Remote working requires better security. Does Yes provide any services around cybersecurity and secured workplace collaboration tools? How do we enable and deploy solutions remotely? Srinivas, your views, please.
Yes. So Yash has a mature cybersecurity team that helps customers not just with banking vertical but with several verticals with respect to their data and network and application layered security, along with data classification, restriction levels, and they also help um, our customers to stay compliant with respect to different regulatory requirements with mature frameworks in place. Also, Yash can help us with choosing and implementing corporate social intranets for secure collaboration between remote working tools, especially with respect to process and remote deployment. We also have a continuous integration and deployment team well versed with several technical products that can help with having a smooth and seamless pipeline of remote deployment. So depending on the actual problem statement, we can help consult, compare, and evaluate and recommend the right set of processes and tools. And if there is any need of any customized solution, we can help build that as well.
Thanks, Srinivas. This is the last question we are taking for today, and this one is for Mr. Hitesh. Are there any new banking products that the bank should offer to their customers that suits current financial crisis? Hitesh, your views, please.
There are several products the banks could consider. For example, is there a insurance product the banks can sell which deals with events like what we just saw, where it's not unemployed, so you're not talking about unemployment insurance, and it is not that you are sick, you are probably forced to not, you are not getting a salary for 2 months because the company you work for has decided instead of laying you off, they are giving you a forced absence, leave of absence. So what do you do with such a situation? Can there be a insurance product for that? Gautam was talking about home delivery of services. So some of the banks have now even started mobile ATMs where the ATM van can come to your doorstep and you withdraw your the required money. The other end of the spectrum is, of course, digital wallets and digital payment technologies. So there is I would say there's a lot the banks can do. We spoke about the forced reimagination of the banking, and a lot of things will come out of this.
Thanks, Hitesh. With this, we would conclude the question and answer session. Audience, if you have any questions or you have any query with your digital efforts in uncertain times and with your industry, please email us and we would try to address those. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your perspective on the topic. I'm sure our audience would certainly derive meaningful thoughts from this discussion. In a matter of few weeks, the world of banking has experienced a level of disruption that has and will change everything that had been the normal norm in financial services. There has not been a major change in the way financial institutions conduct business, but in a way employees do their work and the way consumers manage their finances is going to change. If I have to put the entire discussion in one line, it would be it's a pandemic response and a business continuity resources for bank. Thank you to our panel for such an insightful discussion. With this, I would like to invite Gotham to give the closing notes and wrap up the session. Thank you all.
Yep. Thank you, and I think, as you rightly said, this session was very insightful, and we are all facing this pandemic response on the banking side as well, and we'll hope things will settle down and services will resume as usual with the new normal. So I would like to say a note of thanks for all the esteemed guests that we had, Hitesh and Srinivas. Thank you for your time, and we look forward for hearing more such insights from you in the future as well. So thank you all. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We'll be shortly uploading the recording of the webinar and reaching out to everyone. Thanks all. Have a nice day.